This is Hannibal here with a daily wrestling news update. NXT did a 0.14 rating Tuesday night, and Dana White appeared on the Full Send podcast today. Didn't say much negative about Conor McGregor. Said basically up in the air whether him or John Jones ever fight again, although they both seemingly want to fight. He also thinks Power Slap is going to be more popular than UFC. And he also paid a guy $10,000 to sit in a cold plunge for 12 minutes. I wish I had a cold plunge. Tony Khan, who loves to say everything is an exciting announcement. Okay, in this one paragraph today, he used the word exciting 4 times. By the way, one of the announcements is Fulham FC, soccer. I call it soccer because I'm Canadian. Soccer team in the UK, which I think his family is involved with, are going to be wearing AEW jerseys this year. That is probably exciting to AEW fans. Will probably find that cool. So let's read this thing. And by the way, I got more information that I'll go through after I read this. This is a very exciting time in AEW for many reasons. We're a few days away from AEW All In on August 25th. This is the most important and exciting time in AEW history. I will say one thing. This is not the most exciting time in AEW history. I don't hate AEW. I wish them the best. But please don't tell us bullshit. It was exciting when it first developed, and as John Paz and I talked about on our Covenant Sullivan podcast today, around the time CM Punk was there, had a lot of buzz to it. If this is the most exciting time in AEW history, where I think in July they averaged 1,500, including comps for Collision, for the Collision tapings, that's a pretty bad exciting time in history. A time in history where nobody cares about Rampage or Collision anymore because they only put any effort into Dynamite. Although apparently they might start trying to put a bit of effort in the other shows after some all-time lows that they just hit. In addition to what's happening in the ring, there are so many exciting things happening. Again, exciting things happening behind the scenes in AEW right now. We are on the verge of the most important announcements in the history of AEW. There are multiple aspects. The arrival of these announcements is imminent. We'll have big news that can come at any time. Isn't that the best kind of wrestling surprise? When you know something is coming and you want it, and it's exciting. Tony Khan's favorite word. But you're not sure when it's going to happen. You have that feeling it's going to happen. Apparently, one of these exciting announcements, quote-unquote exciting announcements, is also that they are going to do a stadium show in Australia, where apparently they don't have that much of a fan base in Australia, but wherever they're going might be giving them incentives to come there. Again, these announcements might be imminent. Please use Outback Jack if you come to Australia. Please. I was so disappointed WWE hasn't used Outback Jack on any of their stadium shows. I would love to see the reaction he would get. The original Australian television wrestler. I know there was the Kangaroos too, but for my generation, it was Outback Jack. I had the toy. And by the way, I've interviewed him. But yeah, I mean, they're probably going to announce a TV deal soon because their current TV deal is almost expired. According to reports, they lost $34 million last year. So maybe this TV deal will finally lead them to breaking even. But do the fans really care that much about a TV deal unless it makes the show more accessible? I don't know. I don't know if the fans care as much about the TV deals. In the past, I mean, I know it's a different time, but I don't remember in the past when wrestling was really good. Like, people just watched it. They wouldn't really care where they watched it, whether it was in syndication or wherever. But I guess now where you're playing has a lot to do with how much money you're making. The Ragu Overlord is going to go to Australia if they do a show there. Well, apparently, more likely than not, they're going to be doing a show in Australia. And if they do bring out, if you're talking about if they do bring out Backjack, you're going. Get him. I don't think he could sing his theme song in AEW unless they paid for it. They're known for paying for songs. Who knows? I wish them the best, but all I'm saying is they overuse the term exciting and they overuse these exciting announcements so much to the point that nobody cares. Does anyone in Canada? I mean, soccer is somewhat popular here, but not crazy popular. But do many people really care on this side of the? I mean, it's good. It's great for the UK fans, but I mean, also one thing I'll say also had to do with Dana White. He said on this podcast today, the Full Send podcast, that he hates golf and soccer. I agree with him fully on that. I find golf, I have zero interest in ever playing, and it's boring as hell to watch. Soccer, I really find it boring as hell to watch. And I don't mean to insult any of you soccer fans or football fans, or I know some of you call it footy. I have zero. If it's not a contact sport, I really have zero interest in watching it. My parents forced me to play soccer when I was younger. Maybe that's where my issue with it, because they didn't want to put me in martial arts when I was younger because they were afraid I was going to beat everybody up. Even though it actually teaches you discipline, they ended up doing it, but they forced me into some sports that I really didn't like. And I end up like really excelling. The sports I was best at ended up being combat sports related. Who sung Timmy Kangaroo down when he went to prison in England? I never heard that he went to prison. I heard that he was ribbed. I heard that he was overall a good guy, but he was really entering into a Shark Tank, and he wasn't really that trained, and there was a lot of veterans in there that didn't like that he was getting a push they may or may not have deserved in a time when you really had to deserve your push. And he was brutalized behind the scenes. But I'm sure he's still a lovable character to wrestling fans like me, and I'm sure the Australian people would appreciate seeing him. If Tony Khan sees this, please do something for the Outback Jack if you go to Australia. I really think like they had that interview segment with Cody when WWE last came there. Cody didn't wrestle for some reason in the stadium. Neither did CM Punk. I think he may have been injured. But like it was for a stadium show. The main event was Rhea Ripley against Nia Jax, which I don't know. It wasn't a bad match or anything, but I don't know if that merits a stadium. But I just think it would have been cool if they had done a segment with Outback Jack at some point. But that's just me babbling, and now I'm rambling. So have a great night. Check out the podcast I did with John Paz about an hour ago, talking about our memories of Kevin Sullivan. John and I both knew him I knew him for over 10 years. John knew him for about 8-ish. But John did do a podcast with him for the past 4 or 5 years that aired on this channel. I have a Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan playlist right here on the Hannibal TV. And I'm glad I got so much of his knowledge documented on this channel. And by the way, I've really been enjoying these Jimmy Snuka clips that the RF video let me post on here lately. Interesting guy, but there's a guy with mystique. People don't have mystique anymore. Kevin Sullivan had mystique in his prime. Jimmy Snuka, like, love him or hate him, he's a very controversial guy, but he had a very big mystique about him, and I think mystique is really what's missing today.